One of the more popular episodes on this channel is called Odds and Sods, Part 1, which was episode 35. And in that earlier episode, what I did was dig back through the collection, because every collection has groups of records that are just odd, and some that I don't know why I still have them. They're the Sods. So I thought it would be fun to go and dig some more, pull up some more oddities, and see if we can scratch the surface of what's odd and what's sod. So you ready? Let's drop the needle. Now let me start by saying that I like these odd albums, but a lot of them are going to be very hard to find. If you're interested in any of them, check online or go to your local vinyl store. You're going to have to do some digging, but if you find them, you'll be in for some good listening. Now this is my first odd album. It's a German band. They formed in Cologne in 1970, and their name is Die Black Fuß, which translates into barefoot, apparently, because they used to perform barefooted. Now this is a very, very catchy album. The songs are infectious. You open it up, there's a picture of the band inside there, and the song titles and the lyrics. Now unfortunately, I can't tell you what any of these songs on this album are about, because I don't speak German. But it's a fun album to listen to. I have no idea what they're singing, but they certainly seem to enjoy it. The band is still active today, and if you speak German, you can check out their website at www.dieblackfuß.de. My second odd album was spearheaded by Frank Zappa, but he doesn't appear on it. It's called Acapella, and it's by an acapella group called The Persuasions. The reason this album is in my odd selection in the collection is because it is just all acapella. There is no instruments. It's just these guys singing their hearts out. That was cool. What first drew me to it was Zappa's connection. And then secondly, the radio station that I worked at in Los Angeles, which I've talked about before, KPPC in Pasadena, didn't really want to get into radio jingles. You know, we were an FM underground hippie radio station, so the idea of having radio jingles just seemed kind of weird. But we hit on a groovy idea. We hired the Persuasions to do the jingles for KPPC FM.
KPPC FM, the sound of stereo. KPPC FM, Pasadena, stereo.
Over the years, the Persuasions have recorded over 30 albums, and a lot of them are cover albums. They cover Frank Zappa. They cover the Grateful Dead. And of course, they even cover the Beatles. My third oddity comes out of Chicago radio. Back in 1966, at WCFL radio in Chicago, there was a production designer named Dick Orkin. Now you got to remember at the same time, the TV show Batman with Burt Ward and Adam West was very, very popular. So Orkin decided he would create his own superhero for radio, and he called him Chicken Man. The adventures of Chicken Man were only 2 minutes in duration, and they were played on the morning radio show of Jim Runyon at WCFL. Who is Chicken Man? Well, he's a shoe salesman called Benton Harbor, who strikes terror into the hearts of criminals. Or so he thinks.
Now, another exciting episode in the life of the most fantastic crime fighter the world has ever known.
Every day was a new episode, and it ran for months. And then it got picked up for syndication, and was picked up by 1,500 radio stations and translated into foreign languages. I guess Chicken Man really is everywhere. This album contains a number of the Chicken Man episodes. It's called The Best of Chicken Man. For my fourth odd album, I'm going to pick Fever Tree, Now, they were a band that came out of Houston, Texas. They were a one-hit wonder, really. They had a big hit with San Francisco Girls, Return of the Native. And when this album was released in 1965, because of that hit, I bought the record. It's a great song, and I also like 99 and a Half. Their covers of Day Tripper, We Can Work It Out, and Neil Young's Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing. Fever Tree recorded a second album, but it didn't sell. For number 5, this is another pretty obscure record. It's called Morning, and on the cover it shows 6 guys in the band. Now, this was released in 1970, and I like this album, and I played it a lot on the radio. But I can't find anything about the record or about the group in any of my research. So this is a case of, if you guys find out something about Morning, if you know anything about the band or any of their history, please leave me a comment, because I'd like to know more about what happened to these guys. I like the lead-off Angelina, also Sleepy Eyes, Dirt Roads, and Roll 'Em Down. It's really a gem of an album, and they recorded a second album called Morning Struck Like Silver. But on that album, it only shows that the band has 3 members instead of 6, which is on this one. So they must have dwindled down, not only in size of the band, but I guess in popularity. Number 6 is Fool Around by Rachel Sweet. Now, this is really a good album, and it has kind of an interesting backstory. Rachel Sweet started singing gospel music when she was 6 years old. And even when she was young, she appeared in Las Vegas, of all things, opening for Bill Cosby. For this album, she was dubbed the little girl with a big voice. And Rachel was one of the first artists to record for the new label, Stiff Records. Now, her backing band on this album is the Rumors, you know, Graham Parsons' band. And I talked about him in a few episodes earlier. I like B.A.B.Y., Who Does Lisa Like, Elvis Costello's song, Stranger in the House, and Adele Shannon's song, I Go to Pieces. This is my number 7, Rolling Thunder by Mickey Hart. Mickey Hart joined the Grateful Dead as one of their 2 drummers in 1967. He left the band after his father, who was manager of the band, had embezzled money from the band. However, many members of the Grateful Dead still stayed friends with Mickey, and they appear on his solo album. The album is a weird mix of everything from native Indian chants to Indian tabla drumming. I like the main 10 playing in the band, which features Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir from the Dead, John Cipollina from Quicksilver Messenger Service, and Stephen Stills. I also like Blind John, featuring Grace Slick and Paul Kantner from Jefferson Airplane, and Barry Melton from Country Joe and the Fish. In 1976, Mickey rejoins the Grateful Dead and played with them until they dissolved in 1995. But now he plays with Dead and Company. At number 8, we have a well-known musician, a member of a very popular pop band with numbers of hits, who suddenly just disappears. And then he reappears with this album, and it's called Alive and Well in Argentina. It's by the beloved Zalman Janiowski of The Loving Spoonful. For some reason, he left the group, and when I saw this album, I thought he really was living in Argentina. In reality, he had returned home to Canada following a drug bust in the U.S. For such a gifted performer, I found this album to be a disappointment. But there are interesting cuts, such as the title track, Raven in a Cage, You Talk Too Much, and Little Bitty Pretty One. This is Zally's only solo album. He left the music business and then started a string of restaurants throughout Canada. Sadly, in 2002, Zally died. He was 58 years old. At number 9 in my list of odd albums is the United States of America, and its leader says it's avant-garde, electronic music, political rock, and performance art. Yeah, the album is all that, and it's the only album that they ever made. At times it's difficult to listen to, but then something clicks. I like the American Metaphysical Circus, the Garden of Earthly Delights, and an oddly titled Love Song for the Dead Shay. And my favorite song is I Won't Leave My Wooden Wife for You, Sugar. And my last odd album, at least this time around, has a connection with, of course, the Beatles. The album is called Mcgear. It was recorded in 1974 by an artist called Michael Mcgear. Mcgear is the stage name of Paul McCartney's brother, Michael McCartney. If you're a Paul McCartney fan, you really have to listen to this record. When the record was first released, Paul got no credit for co-producing, writing, and even playing on the record. And of course, he did all three of those things. All of the songs but one on the album are written by Paul, Linda, and Mike. I like What Do We Really Know, Leave It, Simply Love You, Giving Grease a Ride, and The Man Who Found God on the Moon. Despite the star power of his brother being all over this album, it didn't really sell. Now, Mike recorded a second album, but it didn't sell either, and that was the end of his musical career. But he's made a very successful career as a professional photographer. His photo graces the cover of Paul's Chaos and Creation in the Backyard album, and he's published books of the Beatles backstage and early impressions of Liverpool. Okay, now for a few Sods. And these are albums I still have, but I really can't tell you why. Now, everybody alive back in 1965 remembers the #1 apocalyptic hit, Eve of Destruction by Barry Mcguire. The Mamas and Papas sang about him on their song Creek Alley. The album is called Mcguire and the Doctor. The Doctor is Eric Hord, who played guitar for the Mamas and Papas. This is the only album that they've ever released. The album features an all-star lineup of folks like Bernie Leadon from the Eagles, Chris Hillman from the Byrds, and even Herb Alpert. Even so, this album tanked, and the songs are lifeless and uninspiring. After this album, Barry Mcguire became a born-again Christian and started recording Christian songs. I have no idea what happened to the Doctor. My next Sod album is an album that has a lot of negative emotions connected to it, and why I still have it in my collection is totally beyond me. The album is called Scrufferty by J.P. Rags, and I'm sure you have never ever heard of it, and I doubt that I have even ever played a song off of it. So why do I have it? Because J.P. Rags, this guy right here, his real name is Doug Cox. And Doug Cox was the general manager of the radio station that I worked at, KPPC in Pasadena. And he's the guy that came in one Sunday night after illegally taking the station off of the air and fired the entire staff, putting an end to one of the best radio stations in the country. A pox on J.P. Rags. Now, this last one is definitely a Sod. In 1971, Terry Nelson was a disc jockey in Alabama, and he went into a recording studio with some session musicians and created a very hokey single and put it out. The band was called C Company, featuring Terry Nelson, and the treachy song was the Battle Hymn of Lieutenant Calley. Now, if you don't remember Lieutenant Calley, he was court-martialed for his role in the My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War, and this song basically defends him. Terry capitalized on this newfound fame by quickly releasing this album. It's called Wake Up America. Basically, the album glorifies war, from the Revolutionary War through Vietnam. I imagine that I bought this album so that I could play snippets of it on the radio during anti-war music sets, but I don't recall that I ever did. So there you have it, 10 odds and 3 sods. And you know what? I'm sure there's a whole lot more buried in there that we'll dig up at some future time. Until then, thanks for watching, and keep it rockin'. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.